I was to ask you who the third best team in the AFC is, who would you pick?
Third best team in the AFC. So Bills 1, Jags 2. I guess I would go with the Chiefs 3.
Right.
I think that's kind of the obvious one.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Monkey Knife Fight's NFL show. I'm Dan Watkins. Joining me, he's back this week, the great Nick Whalen of Rotowire.com. Nick, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I am back. I'm extremely back. I had a very busy week last week. Was out in Colorado. I had another wedding in Wisconsin on Saturday. Kind of did the Tony Stewart, 2 events in one day type of situation. Felt a lot like Tony himself, but very good to be back. Excited for another week in the NFL. Although kind of a rough week with a lot of the seemingly elite teams on bye. The Bills, the Eagles, the Vikings all on bye. Even the Rams, who are no longer an elite team, but still an interesting team nonetheless. It always kind of sucks when you get into like week 6 and 7 and you kind of forget that bye weeks exist. You got 16 games the first few weeks of the year. And I mean, that difference going from 16 down to 14 doesn't seem like it should be that significant, but as diehard NFL guys, it is. I miss those 4 teams that are out of action.
Yeah, especially when they start spreading games out. You got a Thursday night, maybe you got a Sunday morning, Monday night, Sunday night. And it's like it brings the 1 o'clock window down to like 6 games.
Yeah, it's 6 games. I mean, that's not nearly enough. I need more games to switch between. I mean, we got news yesterday that next year there's going to be a Black Friday game. So, we're presumably going to have Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday football. I mean, there's Saturday football late in the year as well. Tuesday and Wednesday are the only days that are safe.
Yeah, a genius move by Amazon, by the way, now to get people to stay home on Black Friday and then they can do their shopping then.
Yep.
But anyways, the NFL has just really become a parity-driven league. I think what is it? Over a third of the league is at like 3-3 or 3-2 or 3-2-1 or something like that. And there's only 8 teams in the league that have a record of 4-2 or better right now.
Yeah, I mean, we were debating on the Rotowire Sirius XM show this week. Who's the 4th best team in the NFL? I don't think there's a clear answer right now. I think record-wise, it's either the Giants or the Vikings. And I don't know that, straight up, I would pick those teams against some of the other teams that have lesser records. I mean, you could still make a case for a team like Tampa that's sitting at 3-3. I mean, the 49ers are 3-3. Dallas at 4-2, I think has to be considered, especially when you take into account that they haven't even had their starting quarterback for a full game this year. It's crazy. It really feels like Buffalo, KC, and Philly have separated themselves on a separate tier. And, we've been locked in on the NFL for our entire lives. Like I'm sure it's happened before and maybe we just don't remember, but I cannot think of a time in recent memory where there's been this few teams that it feels like you can count on week to week.
Yeah, no, it's for gambling purposes. I look at these spreads every week.
Horrific.
And I'm just like, I like this week. Was it the Jets are getting a touchdown in Denver or something like that? And it's like,
I mean, I think they've closed that line. They're now like 1 or 1.5 point dogs at Denver, but there's some weird ones. I mean, the Jags are 3-point favorites against the Giants.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think the Giants are good. I'll say that, but I also don't think the Jags are good. I mean, the Giants are 5-1, and they're dogs on the road to a team that just lost to the Colts, the Texans, and the Eagles 3 games in a row. So yeah, week to week, it's been a complete mess. It feels like there's always a catch with every spread. There's never a game that you're like, all right, this is a stone cold lock. This team cannot lose. There's always something weird with like a quarterback goes out or an injury or, the location of the game can play into it. Even last week, like Buccaneers at Steelers, you're thinking like there's absolutely no way the Buccaneers don't blow out Pittsburgh. And not only do they not blow them out, they end up losing that game straight up. It just feels like this is going to be the story all year.
Yeah, well, in that game, when your starting quarterback decides to go to a wedding in Manhattan Friday night and then skip the walkthrough on Saturday, then show up Sunday, not play great, and then scream at his offensive lineman on the national television, that might have something to do with it too.
Yeah, and not to name any names, I don't know who you're talking about. That could be anybody. I don't really fault that man for going to that wedding.
But I think he could have made the walkthrough in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, of course. It's just funny. Like, it's interesting. I don't think he does that if they're playing like the Chiefs that week. I think he was like, well, this is a gimme no matter what. Why does it matter if I'm there? Obviously that was wrong, but it's really interesting because it's just so opposite of what Tom Brady has built his entire brand on, right? Like he's the guy that's doing all the work. He's staying late. He's going to walkthroughs. He's the good soldier, falling in line, you're taking pay cuts. And it feels like now late in his career, he's kind of thrown that all out the window. It's a weird development.
Yeah, I think that just like the culture down there in Tampa has just kind of infected Tom's brain, and then he can just do whatever he wants. There's no one that's going to rein him in. Obviously, he did not get along with Bruce Arians, as we found out at the end there. I think he walks all over Todd Bowles. I don't think Todd Bowles has ever told Tom Brady what to do or even tried to. So I think he might miss a little bit of that structure of Bill Belichick, just a little bit there towards the end of his career here.
Yeah, he's getting into kind of like LeBron mode a little bit, where it kind of feels like he's kind of seeing himself as like a separate entity from the rest of the team and the rest of the league. And look, when you're Tom Brady or you're LeBron James, you can get away with that for the most part, but it's going to eventually ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back and let's get back to this, like these teams that are a little bit better than 4 or that are 4-2 or better. And let's do a little buy or sell with teams that are 4-2 or better, not named the Chiefs, the Bills, or the Eagles. Whether or not, Nick, you buy in these guys as like legit contenders this year. So let's start off, buy or sell the 5-1 Minnesota Vikings.
Normally I would say sell, but I think by default you have to buy this team. I mean, they're up 2 games on Green Bay in the division. They also have the tiebreak as of right now via that head-to-head win in week 1. So they are well on track to win the division and be in the mix. And we have already seen them lose in pretty convincing fashion to Philly. So that is going to be in the back of your mind. But I think just by default, as being a team that's well on track to make the playoffs, once you get there, anything can happen. And I think Minnesota's in a great position right now to be, maybe the 2 or the 3 seed in the NFC and set themselves up pretty good. So I'll buy the Vikings.
Yeah. Do you think Kirk Cousins has written to the league office saying, please don't flex us into prime time down the stretch?
Yeah, I don't know if he's writing these handwritten notes or it's an email. It could be a text at this point. It is 2022 after all, but I would imagine, yeah. I mean, maybe he's looking to play games like, if we could play this game under the cover of night, like let's see if we could start this one at 3 a.m. so nobody's watching. I think that would be ideal. They'd probably go 17-0.
Kirk seems like the kind of guy that might take those Kohl's cash coupons and like cut out the letters on them and then like paste them on and then send a letter in that
like
way.
A ransom. Yeah. Like a ransom note made of Kohl's cash.
Yeah.
I mean, tell you what, here in Wisconsin, Kohl's is a pretty big deal. That would be a fear for a lot of people.
Who doesn't love Kohl's? Anyways, moving on. The 5-1 New York Football Giants, buy or sell?
Big time sell. I've eaten my words on this one for like 5 weeks in a row now. I don't think this is a good team. They're well coached. I'll give them that. Brian Daboll is doing one of the best jobs I can remember of maximizing the talent on this team, but I still don't really think they have a good quarterback. They've done a fantastic job of kind of scheming around Daniel Jones. The offensive line, you think back to that Dallas game, seems like it should be more of a liability than it has been. You got to give credit to the defense. They've played fairly well, but I mean, this might be a bottom 3 receiving core in the entire league. Outside of Saquon Barkley, like no above average weapons on that offense. So I look stupid for saying it now. They're sitting at 5-1, but I don't buy this team as like an actual team that could win a playoff game. Like I don't think that's in the cards at all.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the Giants, I think it's good for football when the Giants are at least relevant. And I think they're going to be relevant down the stretch here just because they've built themselves a nice cushion going down the stretch. Anyways, moving on. How about the Giants, housemates, roommates, whatever you want to call them, the New York Jets at 4-2, buy or sell?
If they had a different quarterback, I would be buying as much Jet stock as possible. I think at some point they're not going to be able to get away with kind of hiding Zach Wilson in the ways that they've had to. And against a terrible team like the Packers, you could do that. Green Bay is a complete joke right now, and we saw that on full display last week. But I'm really interested to see how this game against Denver goes, because Denver's offense, maybe one of the biggest jokes in the league, but that defense, number 2 in DVOA, they are not to blame whatsoever for these struggles so far. So this will be a really good test, I think, for the Jets and for Zach Wilson. If he could prove that he could play, just even average football, then I really like this team. I mean, they have a ton of young talent on both sides of the ball. So I like the Jets. Maybe I'm not buying them for this year, but I'm buying the Jets for 2023 and beyond.
All right. How about the 4-2 Dallas Cowboys? They're getting Dak back this weekend.
Yep.
Buy or sell?
We need to see what Dak looks like, because he did not look great at all, even before the injury week 1 against Tampa. The offense looked horrific in that game. So interested to see, what kind of rust he has coming back against the Lions team coming off of a bye this week. But I'm buying the Cowboys. I really am. I think this defense is elite. Probably the best pass rush, the most consistent pass rush in the NFL week to week. I think they have a great secondary. And if Dak starts playing like the Dak of the last couple of years, all of a sudden, I think there is a very clear path to the Cowboys emerging as the second best team in the NFC. So I'm buying in on the Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree. I'm buying in on the Cowboys too. The only thing that's holding them back is their head coach. If you could just switch the coaches of the Giants and the Cowboys, oh man, I'd be all in on America's team there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like he's actually coached pretty well, right? Like if anyone else was piloting Cooper Rush to a 4-1 record, we would be talking about him for coach of the year, right? I mean, like you come out of that stretch without Dak, and I think 4-2 is like the best case scenario with the one loss coming to the Eagles, and even in that game, you're able to battle back from down 20-0 and make it a close game. I think we've already kind of decided that Mike McCarthy's a bad coach, and I agree with you. I think he is. He's proven that. But I think if anyone else was coaching this team, they'd be getting a ton of praise.
Oh, definitely. I think we've just seen this story with Mike McCarthy too many times in the past.
Yeah.
And just like he's just going to mess it up at some point. And we'll see. It's yet to be seen. All right, last one. The 4-2 Los Angeles Chargers. Buy or sell?
I want to buy them. I think I will officially make this a buy. I mean, there's an insane amount of talent on this team. They've had Keenan Allen for essentially 3/4 of a game so far. I don't think he's going to play this week either. They do seem to have the running game figured out a little bit. That was disastrous through the first few weeks. Still some major questions about that offensive line. I mean, you think of how many times it felt like Justin Herbert was like running 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage against Denver and just whipping the ball, kind of into oblivion. So that it doesn't feel like they've really put it together to the level that we thought they would, given their talent acquisitions. But I mean, once they get healthy late in the year, I still think this is going to be one of those teams that nobody wants to play. Like, I think I think Brandon Staley's a bad coach. I think he's limiting what the Chargers can do, but they're so talented. They have such a good quarterback, and they have the elite pieces that they could beat anybody at any time. So by default, I will buy in on the Chargers.
Yeah, you got to buy the talent, but it's just they're going to Charger this up somehow. Where they're just going to. It's the same story with the Chargers for the last 15 years.
Yeah,
where it just doesn't end well with them either. So, anyways, all right. And then there's like 13 teams that are like 3-3 or whatever. So hopefully we get some more teams over 500, which we will after this week. And let's get into the 1 o'clock slate here. Let's do a little 2-minute drill to start things off with some of our contests on MKF. Let's start off with that. What do we got? The Bengals and Falcons game. The Atlanta Falcons surprisingly 6-0 against the spread this year. I think they're 6.5-point dogs heading into Cincinnati. But let's talk about Joe Burrow, 275.5 passing yards, more or less.
I'm going to go more here. The Bengals, to their credit, have done a really good job of attempting to establish the run. It has not gone very well. The yards per carry has been pretty ugly for Joe Mixon, but we started to see flashes last week of that explosive passing game that was their hallmark in 2021. You think of that 60-yard touchdown by Jamar Chase to essentially win the game. I think they're going to kind of have to decide at some point that that's the offense, going for big plays. You got 3 really good receivers. You got a decent tight end. So I think they'll once again try to run the ball. They'll probably fail at that early in the game, and then they'll be airing it out the rest of the way. So I like Joe Burrow this week, and that line, starting to move a little bit in favor of Cincinnati. So I think there's some belief that this could be a big day for that Bengals offense.
All right. And how about Jamar Chase? 82.5 receiving yards. You're going more on Burrow. You go more on Chase too?
Yeah, I think so. You look at kind of the trend last year with Jamar Chase, had a couple big games early, had that huge week 1. But then, after that, it kind of slowed down a little bit. But once he picks up steam, like he's like a shooter in the NBA. Like once he gets hot, it seems like he goes 2-3 games in a row where he's just completely unstoppable. So, prior to this past week, it had 4 kind of meh games, but 7 for 132 and 2 touchdowns last week. I think this is an Atlanta secondary, an Atlanta defense overall that could be taken advantage of. I mean, they don't have Casey Hayward. They might not have AJ Terrell in this game. I think this is a really good spot for the Burrow Chase combo.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Cowboys taking on the Lions. Dak Prescott is back, as we mentioned. And what a gift for Dak in his first game back as he gets to see the worst defense in the National Football League. His passing total is 270.5, more or less, for Dak.
You said it. This is a fantastic spot for Dak Prescott, but I'm going to go less here. I think there's a chance he's a little rusty. I mean, obviously he's dealing with a hand injury, so it's kind of a direct impact as far as how you play quarterback. And I also think you can run the ball in Detroit. So there, Dallas is a team that has 2 very good running backs. If they can move the ball with Ezekiel Elliott, I think they're more than happy to do that. Obviously, Tony Pollard factors into that as well. So I think we see a game where they hope they can ease Dak back into action. I don't think you necessarily want Dak Prescott approaching 300 yards in this game. I think that means that you're involved in a shootout that you probably don't want to be involved in. And you also have to keep in mind, Detroit is the worst defense in the league, but they're coming off of a bye. So, they're having 2 full weeks to prepare for this team. So I don't think we see, another blowout of Detroit like the last time we saw them against New England.
All right. And how about CeeDee Lamb? 85.5 receiving yards for CeeDee, more or less.
I'm going to go less here. I know that's, kind of erring on the side of negativity, but, Dalton Schultz should be back in action. He's kind of been Dak's favorite target when he's been healthy. Obviously, Michael Gallup is back in the mix. So I do think this is a game that Dallas tries to win on the ground. I don't see it being an explosive day for Dak Prescott. So decent game for CeeDee Lamb, but I don't see him approaching 100 yards.
All right, let's head to the AFC North. We got the Browns at the Ravens. Nick Chubb, after getting bottled up against the Patriots last week, his number against the Ravens is 89.5 rushing yards, more or less.
I'm going to go more here. Chubb really had his first bad game of the year last week against New England. Heading into that game, he was on a 2,000-yard pace over 17 games. So I think he gets back on the right side. I mean, you got to give credit. This Baltimore defense has improved the last couple of weeks after a disastrous start, but it's still not quite to the level that you'd like it to be. To me, though, we'll see. It'll depend on that Cleveland defense, because if they fall behind yet again, which they've done for the last couple of weeks, especially last week, they're going to have to get away from the run, and they won't necessarily have the advantage of pounding Nick Chubb 20 plus times. So I do think he bounces back here. I think we get a competitive game, and I'll go more on 89.5.
All right. On the other side, you got Baltimore's big tight end, Mark Andrews, 79.5 receiving yards, more or less.
I'll go more. I think this Cleveland secondary is a disaster right now. And we should note, by the way, Mark Andrews did not practice at all on Wednesday. So there is a chance that he could not play or be limited on Sunday. But nonetheless, I still think this is a great spot for him. Cleveland's defense has just fallen off a cliff over the last couple of weeks. Myles Garrett's still banged up. Jadeveon Clowney's banged up. Denzel Ward could very well miss this game as well. That would be a huge, huge blow for a secondary that hasn't been that good with him in the lineup. So, Baltimore's one of those teams. They all their losses to me have just been like inexcusable. I feel like there's a path where they could be at 5-1 pretty easily. I think they're better than their record, and this is probably one of those games where they show that.
Yeah, if I was to ask you who the third best team in the AFC is, who would you pick?
Third best team in the AFC. So Bills 1, Jags 2. I guess I would go with the Chiefs 3.
Right.
I think that's kind of the obvious one.
So the fourth.
No, that's a fair question. I mean, I honestly, like, New England comes to mind as a possibility at this point. For me, in terms of like ceiling team, I still think it might be Cincinnati. I know they haven't really looked like the team from the end of last season, but I still like trust Joe Burrow in that offense. Like, if they need to go down and score with 2 minutes left, I feel like they can do it pretty much at will. But yeah, Cincinnati versus Baltimore, that's interesting. Obviously, Baltimore beat Cincinnati, although it was in Baltimore. I think those teams probably end up splitting this year. To me, it's between the Chargers, the Bengals, the Ravens, and choose one of the Patriots or the Dolphins, because it feels like we've kind of kicked Miami to the curb here, but they've been under terrible duress at the quarterback position for a few weeks in a row. So Miami is a team I think that could reemerge because they looked really, really good before Tua went down.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the Dolphins coming up here on this show in just a little bit, as they are on Sunday Night Football this week. But I do have two more guys for you here in the 1 o'clock slate, Nick. Derrick Henry, the Titans taking on the Colts for what feels like the fourth time this season. The Colts schedule, they started off with 5 of 7 games in the division. But anyways, King Henry's line is 85.5 rushing yards.
I guess I'll go more. I don't know. I hate talking about these teams. Like you said, they played a couple of weeks ago. It was as ugly as you'd expect. Henry went for 114 yards in that game on 22 carries. I think we see a similar script. I mean, Tennessee's coming off the bye. He should be healthy, should be good to go. Indy's rush defense looked really good, though, against the Jags. I mean, didn't really get much at all for James Robinson. But James Robinson is not Derrick Henry. So I'll go more here.
Big of you to admit. I'm actually kind of shocked you would admit that.
Thank you.
Good on you. Good on you. Anyways, and last up, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers here for a minute. They're at Washington, 250.5 passing yards. Before we get to that, did you see the latest controversy with Washington in the 50-50 raffle?
No, but please give me a briefing on that.
So their last home game, they did the 50-50. The guy wins it. The check he was written was $100 for $14,000. Takes it to the bank this week. The check bounces. Just absolutely perfect.
Only the Commanders.
Only the Commanders. I guess they did it.
That's so funny.
But yeah, the guy's like, what do I have to do? Actually call Dan Snyder personally, be like, hey, give me my money or something like that.
Oh my God,
and Rodgers' number is down to 240, by the way. It's dropped.
As it should, man. This Packers team, it has the look of a team that's struggling and also just knows that it's struggling and is almost kind of like leaning into it. I mean, it's just so much negativity on both sides of the ball. No help is arriving anytime soon. I mean, Randall Cobb has basically been Aaron Rodgers' favorite receiver. He's not going to play in this game. I don't think Sammy Watkins is going to be available. We'll see about Christian Watson. I think this is a dangerous spot for Green Bay, and I don't think that Washington starting Taylor Heinicke really changes anything for me. I think the Packers could very easily lose this game. I think they struggle again. I think they get off to another slow start, and I think we come out of this game feeling even worse about Aaron Rodgers. I'm going less.
All right, very down on Green Bay.
Very down.
Let's move on and let's talk about I would say the premier game of this weekend, and that would be the Chiefs at the 49ers. The Chiefs are favored by 3 points. The over-under is 48.5. Patrick Mahomes, 289.5 passing yards is his more or less. He's reached 290 in 3 of 6 games, but San Francisco is the second best pass defense in the NFL, allowing just 168 yards per game, but they are very banged up heading into this one.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, it's all about the injuries for San Francisco. They were unbelievably banged up last week against Atlanta. I admittedly did not kind of take that into consideration enough when I picked them to cover at Atlanta. And that was a huge reason why, that game went south for them. So, if they're without, at least half of those key guys yet again, then I think this is an easy over for Mahomes. If they get a lot of those key players back on defense, then it becomes a little dicier. But either way, I mean, I don't know that the Chiefs are going to be able to stop the 49ers ground game. So I think we could get a back and forth game where Mahomes has to throw the ball a decent amount. So I'll go more.
All right, Jimmy G on the other side, 240.5 passing yards. He's reached 241 in 2 of his 4 starts, and he hit 239 yards in another one. They are starting to let him throw more, Nick, over 30 attempts in each of the last 2 weeks. And this Kansas City defense ranks 27th in the NFL when it comes to passing yards allowed. Seems like it's ripe for the picking here.
Yeah, I think so. And really, it comes down to whether Kansas City can stop the run. And if they do, that means Jimmy G is going to have to throw more. That was kind of the story last week. When you're trailing, obviously Jimmy's going to have to air it out. And I do think Kansas City is going to be able to score. So it's probably going to be a game where the Niners won't necessarily be able to fall back and just run clock like they were against Carolina a couple of weeks ago. I think they're going to have to throw the ball for better or for worse. It might not be what they want to do, but I think that's what they're going to have to do. So I'll go more on Jimmy G as well.
All right, let's talk about a couple of the skill guys quick. Travis Kelce, 78.5 receiving yards. He's reached 79 or more in 3 of 6, but he hasn't put together back-to-back big yardage games yet this season. Can he do that on Sunday?
I think he can. He had the big touchdown game, against the Raiders, and then kind of a different story against Buffalo, like you said. I think we see kind of a more traditional Travis Kelce game in this matchup. Probably a little bit of regression from a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, who had a huge game last week. That hasn't really been his MO this season. So yeah, I'll go more on Kelce.
All right, you got the other tight end on the other side, and that'd be George Kittle, 50.5 receiving yards. He's reached 51 or more yards just once this season, which was last week. Right. And also, my other question for you, Nick, does he finally find the end zone in this one?
I'm going to say no, and I'm going to go less. I don't really love how George Kittle's looked this year. I mean, he was being drafted as, maybe like the, probably 4th or 5th tight end. It was kind of Kittle or Waller in a lot of leagues, and he's been really disappointed. He was hurt early on. He just hasn't really looked like himself. Hasn't had any of those kind of crazy George Kittle run after the catches where he's got 6 guys dragging all over him. I don't know if it's just kind of a usage thing or if he's kind of still not there physically, but I don't love what I've seen from him. So this isn't exploitable Chiefs defense. We know that, but I don't really trust it this week. So I'll go less on Kittle.
All right. Last, we'll go with Deebo Samuel, 59.5 receiving yards. He's reached 60 receiving yards in 3 of 6 games. Can he do that again this week? Excuse me.
Yeah, I'll go more there. I mean, especially if we're going more on Jimmy G, somebody's going to have a big day. And you could just picture Deebo, catching the ball like around midfield and run it all the way to the end zone and, juking out guys and plowing over guys. And all of a sudden he's at 50 some yards on the day. I think this is a pretty low number for Deebo, a pretty attainable number, especially when you compare it to that figure for Jimmy G. So I like that one quite a bit. I'll go more.
All right. Sunday Night Football, Pittsburgh at Miami. The Dolphins are favored by 7. The total in this game is 44.5. Nick, a trivia question for you. NBC acquired the rights to Sunday Night Football in 2006. The Dolphins have the second fewest amount of appearances on Sunday Night Football with 3. Who is the one team in the NFL with fewer?
Jaguars.
Yes, it is.
Gotta be. Jags, I mean, they've gone 11 straight years without any primetime game, Monday or Sunday. So to me, that's, it's got to be the Jags.
Wow. Well, Thursday night doesn't count then, right?
No, Thursday does not count. They always get their Thursday game. They get the London game. But yeah, I want to say it's like 2010 or 11 was the last time they had a Sunday or a Monday game.
But something the Jaguars have done is they have won a Sunday night football game in that time period since 06. The Dolphins, and here's the stat of the day for you, are the only team in the NFL that has not won a game on the current inclination of Sunday night football.
Wow. That I'm going to have to rethink everything. I don't know. Do the Dolphins hate NBC? We'll have to consider that. I actually like the spot for the Dolphins. I worry a little bit about what Tua is going to look like. I mean, even before the second concussion, like the last play that we have of him was like wildly underthrowing Tyreek Hill on a wide open deep ball, so like, I don't know that like going from Tua to Bridgewater is really that big of a downgrade his last couple of weeks. And obviously Bridgewater, was injured himself, and that kind of made everything go haywire. But, 255.5 for Tua T, that seems a little high to me. The Dolphins can air it out if they need to. Tyreek Hill very quietly leads the NFL in receiving this season, and Waddle's had a great year as well. But I think this Pittsburgh defense showed us something last week. I mean, they were kind of left for dead a couple of weeks ago, and then holding that Tampa Bay offense to 18 points was pretty impressive, especially without Minka Fitzpatrick.
Are you starting to buy in on the Steelers defense? They are ranked 30th in the NFL in passing defense. They're allowing 277 yards a game.
I wouldn't say I'm buying in on them, but I think last week was a reminder that Mike Tomlin is on that very short list of coaches who you can't just toss aside and say, well, they're no good this year, because he's always going to find a way to at least put together respectable units.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about their offense. Kenny Pickett, 202.5 passing yards is his more or less. It's been a tale of two starts for Kenny P. He went for 327 against Buffalo with 52 attempts. And then last week, he was only asked to throw the ball 18 times. He finished with 67 yards. What do we see on Sunday night?
Excuse me. Well, obviously he got knocked out of that game last week as well, so that played a factor in the lower total. I think this is high or low enough, I guess the number is, that I think he can go more. I think Miami should be able to score enough that Pittsburgh can't just hand the ball off to Najee Harris for like 2-yard gains and 3-yard losses the entire night. And what we know about Kenny Pickett is he's not afraid to air it out, even if it results in multiple interceptions. That's the big advantage, I think, of him over Mitch Trubisky, is he's at least willing to take those chances. So I think over the course of 4 quarters, assuming he actually plays the entire game, I like them more.
All right. How about Tyreek Hill? As you mentioned, he is the leading receiver in the NFL. Prop for him, we got an MKF, 7.5 receptions. He's reached 8 or more catches in 4 of 6 games. He has another with 7. Are you expecting a big night for Tyreek?
Yeah, it's a high number. I mean, 7.5 is about as high as you're going to see. But like I said, he's leading the league in receiving. He already has 4 games this year where he's gone over that number. He has another game where he's caught exactly 7 passes. So I'll go more here. I think he can do it.
All right. How about Jalen Waddle? 69.5 receiving yards. He's reached 70 in 3 of 6 games and has another one with 69.
Ooh, it's a good number by the crew over at MKF.
Nice
I don't know if does he get credit for the yardage before the fumble last week that ultimately doomed the Dolphins against Minnesota. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I think this is doable. 69.5. They've done a really good job of keeping both of these guys involved. I know there's a lot of fear in the fantasy community that they would kind of cannibalize each other and neither of them would end up being all that elite. And it turns out it's been the opposite, and they've both been really productive. So yeah, we've already seen it a couple times this year where both Hill and Waddle go off in the same game. This could be another one of those spots, much like last week.
All right. And if you had to pick a receiver for Pittsburgh that's going to have a good day.
Oh man, I feel like we go through this song and dance with the Steelers and the Pats every week, and it's on a rotation. 1 week it's George Pickens, the next week it's Chase Claypool, then it's Deontay Johnson. Like Pat Freiermuth might get into the mix. I don't know, man. I think we got to say it's probably not Claypool because he's the one who went off last week. Deontay Johnson's probably the guy I trust the most.
That's probably
in
who
this
I
matchup, but I know we got a number for Pickens, 45.5.
It's actually been taken down. So we got 45.5 for Deontay Johnson.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, MKF must know something. I'll go more on that. I'll go more. I mean, if I think that Kenny Pickett's going to get over 200 yards, I think it's fair to assume that maybe a quarter of those could go to Johnson. All
right. Very good. Anything else this week, Nick?
Not too much. I mean, we got this New Orleans, Arizona game tonight. No idea what's going to happen there. Giants, Jags is going to be a mess for me. I hate both teams. I mean, like you said, Indy, Tennessee is like the most unappealing game of the week. And somehow that's the only game between two winning teams.
Yeah, like that's like, you know how college football Twitter has like the sicko committee? I feel like that is
Yes.
like sicko NFL game where like if you're watching that, like you really just love to torture yourself with bad football.
I mean, half the league is sickos at this point. I mean, you could say like Chicago, New England, that could be a sicko game. I mean, Green Bay, Washington, that's a full on sicko game for sure. Seattle and the Chargers. I mean, sicko kind of in a different way, like a fun sicko. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at like Indy, Tennessee, New Orleans, Arizona, Giants, Jags, Jets, Broncos. All those are just really, really disgusting games, and that's half the slate.
Yep. It's going to be a disgusting slate, but it could be a good one to capitalize on MKF and make some money. So good luck on all your contests this week, guys. Don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube page at Monkey Knife Fight, and have fun watching football.